Karen from County Fairgrounds USA, countyfairgrounds.net. Welcome to today's podcast.
Hi, Lanky. How are you doing?
Doing good. Hello. Good afternoon.
Okay, you've been Lanky the Clown for a long time. How long?
The late 70s. Early 80s. I'd say early 80s. Real early 80s.
Do you run a staff, or is this just your own business for you?
It's my business.
Okay.
Lanky's Corner is just me.
Okay. All right. And how did you get started, and have you ever done anything else?
Oh, gosh, yes. I had no I had gone to college and have a degree. It was not the direction I was headed, clowning. That's just something that has happened. Just something that happened. It slowly took me. I didn't go pursuing it until much later when I realized, okay, it's viable, it's an option, and there's the demand for it.
Well, it's also a lot of fun, right?
It is. Yes. It has. When I'm doing the performance aspect, very pleasurable. 99% of the time. When I have to get to the business side, sometimes that's not as pleasurable.
Believe me, I hear you. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. You've been all over the world, so
yes.
What was your first show, though? Do you remember how you got started? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
The very first time was a high school production. That's where it all started. A high school theater production where I was cast as a clown, and it was not going to go beyond that weekend. That was, you, as most high school productions, you perform on stage and you're done with that character, that performance. Mm-hmm. No, not with this. That's where it all started.
Well, did people start hiring you after that?
Well, I'm going to say the medium-length version. There's not a short and there's not a long. Somebody in the audience came up to me after the show because there's, after all shows, there's a meet and greet in the foyer, to talk to the performers. And a lady who was actually in a local clown alley said, "Hey, you've got this natural, you seem very natural at it. Have you ever considered?" I'm like, "No." And then she invited me to a clown alley meeting, which that's our language, that's our terminology for a clown club.
Okay.
And I this seems interesting. What the heck? I mean, I was still in high school, still young, and thought, what the heck? It might be something fun to do. That's how I perceived it. And then joined him for a charity performance, because that's sort of where you start with when you don't know anything. And went to one. I thought, this is cool. And I went to another one. I said, I'm enjoying it. And then friends of friends, some families said, "Oh, we understand you kept the clowning going." I'm like, "Well, I did." Well, I was like, "Oh, I did? I didn't know that." And got asked to do, "Hey, come do my cousin's birthday or my friend's birthday or just stuff like that. Just come do it." I'm like, "Okay, sure. I don't know what I'm going to do, but okay, sure." And it just kept going and going and going. And I was enjoying it, and it was a nice alternative to things of just sitting home watching TV. Right? Also, back then you didn't do much watching the TV because you only had 4 choices. There was no cable back then. And I enjoyed it. And it worked well with all the different things I found myself, that brought pleasure. That's working with people.
All right. What was your first big live event? A big audience, say.
Beyond the birthday party big. Let's see. I would say that would have been working, gosh, it's going to sound odd. I would say my sort of first big live audiences were during the summers back then. I ran a summer camp where the kids came and stayed for the week. Mm-hmm. And on Thursday nights was talent night, and every cabin had to come up with something to share, whether they did it most of the time as they did it as a whole. the entire cabin
Mm-hmm.
got together and created something to present to the rest of the campers. So this is, would you say big, 100-plus kids?
Yeah.
Or does it need to be more than that? Okay.
Yeah.
So I would quite often say, this is a nice audience that doesn't have anywhere to go. They're not, so I would do either the finale or I would do the emceeing and do bits and pieces. And that's actually where that's where I would practice new stuff, experiment with ideas. I had an audience that, as you say, I had a captive audience, and sort of literally, almost literally, I had that captive. They weren't going anywhere. So I would do shows for them, and it mainly was new material, a new prop, do something that I would try out, or something I've had that I want to try something different with. And so that was every week, over for summers, 6-7 weeks during the summer, every week, doing a show for 100-plus kids and the counselors. That would be my first one, that size.
So when did you start getting, say, paid for it? That's what I'm after.
First paid big gig. Well, that actually led into that community where the camp physically was located, was a small town. Maybe I think it had about 300 people in it, and every year they produced a festival, the International Apple Festival. It was a one-day event that attracted about 20,000 people in this one little town of 300-plus people.
Okay.
And I said, why not? I'm here. Because I would go to it on the weekend because I was stuck there and the kids were gone, so I'd take the counselors and we'd go enjoy the festival. So after going to it once or twice and seeing some of the other entertainment that they had, I'm like, why don't I do that? So I offered them at a quite reduced rate since I was already there and wanted to try something different than what I'd been doing. And I'm like, sure. And so the first year, really discounted rate, and the lady in charge, she said, just love it. Some things I did there, just loved it. And so I was hired there for, every summer for about 10 years. That one-day festival, and then that's where the fair industry started coming in, because then one thing led to another thing, and so that's where I got my feet, as they say, the proverbial get your feet wet, was that festival.
Well, I'm looking at your website, though. You've been all over the world doing clowning. How did that happen?
Most of those, with the exception of a few, most of those were goodwill trips. Either I found out about them or I was asked to participate. A good number of those were because I was invited by Patch Adams to participate. The movie Patch Adams?
Mm-hmm.
The real Patch Adams, not Robin Williams. He's a real person. And he was very much into goodwill and those things of that nature. So we met one another at a convention unrelated to clowning, completely unrelated, but it was in another business that I was, nonprofit that I worked for. And he was a speaker, and I went up to him and said, when he told me about some of his adventures that he would go on as his clown character, I introduced myself and said, here's what I do, and showed him a picture. I said, I'd love to do it sometime, go sometime, accompany you. Great. We're always looking for some experienced clowns. And so one thing, did one, then got invited back, and then hosted one myself, and then I would get invited to others. That's sort of how that just took off. The Guatemala trips happened also again, talking to a lady that ran a nonprofit that had a clinic and orphanage in Guatemala. She did that. She was a philanthropist on her own, but she worked part-time Sam's Club as a taster, those people that hand out samples, or sampler.
Yeah.
And she actually saw me going down the aisle. She knew of me. I didn't know of her because I had been written up, after some of those trips, been written up in our local newspaper. So I had photos, and she goes, you're so-and-so, you're Lanky. I'm like, yes, ma'am. well, I want to tell you about something. So she proceeded to tell me about the clinic and the orphanage in Guatemala, and said, I want you to come on it. I'm like, okay. I said, well, went into the next part of, okay, now, how is this funded? She goes, well, you just have to worry about your airfare. We take care of the rest. Like, okay, I could do that. And so that's how those all came. And I went from clowning on that trip after a few years to actually getting other clowns to go on that trip. And I became the sort of a person there, tour director, in the sense of putting things together on the grounds there in those locations. Yeah, I became more of the person on site there because I got to know to make arrangements with stuff. To be sort of like not tour guide, but tour director, and pulling things together and making sure we're all ready to go.
Well, you're also a clowning instructor at a junior college. How did that happen?
Which kind of instructor?
A clowning instructor at the Texas, in college,
yes,
junior college?
Yes, at the local, they approached me, somebody that was from their continuing ed, once again, some of the exposure and all the traveling and the local media covering some of the events that I participated in. And they said, you know what, this is something that, why we don't expand it. I had been writing for I was the editor of the local clown club, was president of that for a good number of years. And then also I was the editor for the State Clown Association newsletter. So different things led to people discovering. So the local community junior college contacted me saying, well, we'd like to, because that's where you also used to find the basket weaving and the learning basic computer and stuff of those nature that people can go and have some other skills. You don't get college credit for it, but it's still an educational program that they do give certificates of completion. Mm-hmm. And so we did the first year. It turned out fantastic. Much more. They thought, okay, we'll get about 12 people. We had like 35 signed up for the class the very first year. And then each year it changed, as we did it, we've done it for about, past several years, it hasn't happened at all. Of course, a lot of things didn't happen the past 3 years.
That's right. Absolutely.
And then as we did it more and more, and the community didn't really grow in size, you sort of lose the number of people available and interested is not the same number because they've been through the program, and they moved on, moved out, whatever. Done it for I think a total of about 12. It was about 9 years in a row. Then it became every other year, bringing a total of about 13, 14. I don't want to say years, but 13 programs. There was 13 completions. What would be the word to use?
I understand where you're going. Okay. Oh, that's a long time.
Yeah, because there were some gaps. We started doing every other year.
I'm looking at your bio, and this is really bugging me. A Russian goodwill tour?
Yeah, 3 times.
How did that happen?
Well, the first one, that's where a lot of it started. Patch Adams invited me on the first one. Okay. Then I went back a second time. Those were goodwill. I had to find sponsors to pay for my trip, or I had to pay for it. That was not a hiring gig because that was orphanages and hospitals, that's what we were visiting and going to.
That's fine. That's fine.
And then the third one, myself and another clown, we coordinated that trip, and we used clowns on it. The Patch Adams were the ones that were just people that enjoy being silly and just crazy and different. Very few performing clowns were on those trips. Okay. But people with good hearts, that just enjoy silly life and enjoy.
And we all need that now.
Right.
We absolutely all
right.
need that.
Well, you got to remember this also. My first one is back when Russia was communist. Then my second one, they had just made the switch from communism, I can use their term, to pretend democracy. That was their term. that the people that lived there, that's what they called it, pretend democracy. And the third year, they were into it. The third time there, they had already been into it for a couple of years, or a few more years.
Yeah.
The Japan trip, that was I was hired. That was the International Culture Festival. Myself and I think it was six of us were hired to go there. That was a paying gig.
Okay.
Cambodia.
All right.
Cambodia happened after the Afghanistan trips, because there was a documentary made of the first trip to Afghanistan, and that was 9/11 was 2001, and my first trip to Afghanistan was early 2002, so it was just like months after 9/11. And we were doing orphanages and hospitals. We were not there for military. We were there for the people that lived there.
Okay, all right. Well, Danny, how did this is all really interesting stuff. How did you ever start doing, like, you do shows now, right? You go to, like,
I've done shows ever since the start.
Oh, okay. Well, you're
the
doing
birthday parties were shows. Birthday parties were shows. There were shows all along. When I went to these places where I did Goodwill, I actually packed one of my trunks. I packed very little clothes because one of my trunks was nothing but show equipment, even a small miniature PA system that I would use. They were all shows. Fairs and festivals, I really don't do that many stage shows at those. I'm doing strolling entertainment. Strolling and ground entertainment is primarily what I do there. Those are shows, but they're very different than standing on a stage and people sit and watch. Yeah, that's primarily my county fairs. State fairs are primarily strolling work. Like the one I'm getting ready to go to next week is all strolling.
Okay.
No
sounds
stage,
like fun.
no stage. They are. They're a little bit, to me, sometimes they're actually, to me, almost more of a challenge, because a stage show I enjoy, and I love to do stage shows. They are a little bit more routine. You do have some variety depending on the audience and people in the audience, how they may respond. You do a little adjustment for that. But in general, it's a routine progression of performance.
Okay.
Strolling in grounds, even though you have bits and things that are routine, it's not going to be the same every time, because it's all pretty much a lot of improv to play to those people that have gathered around you. And you have to customize, if I've got one family, 3 little kids and mom and dad that you're playing for, the next time I've got 5 teenagers. You're going to do a little different. Yeah. And you choose right there on the spot what you're going to lead off with, what you're going to continue with, and by reading their body language, okay, they're ready to move on. You need to, you need to end it. Unlike a stage, they're sitting there and you do your show.
Okay.
Almost, I'm no other entertainers, but almost as written and produced. You can see their show.
So do you have any regrets about what you've done for a living?
No. There's no reason to regret. There's been moments that I've sometimes you have the what ifs, but then I go out to a booking or a performance, and the what if is like, I'm glad I didn't choose this other route. Because look at the places I've gone. I would have never gone had I chosen the things that I was going to be doing with the degree. I would have never done that. I would never have been to Russia, Afghanistan, Cambodia, Japan. I would never have been to those places. Well, I might have gone as a tourist, but I would have never enveloped myself in the culture when I'm there like I did.
So is there any place you'd like to perform you haven't had a chance?
Of course there is. Of course I'd love to go back to some others. I'd love to do some European markets. I think Australia would be cool and different. Some markets that have a different view. I'd love to go down to Mexico and perform in Mexico even. They have a different view, or not different view. Some of these other countries have a different perspective and when it comes to performing arts, especially clowns, versus American audiences. There is a difference quite often, how they perceive their performance art.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah. So you must really like kids.
Good. Can you repeat that?
You must really like kids, children.
Families.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Yeah. No, I do. Children. I do. I was a foster parent, so I did have kids, even though I wasn't married, but they weren't biologically mine.
Okay, that's good.
If you look at my entire history from graduating high school to even now, there's always been family. There's always been working with young people. Always. I worked at an institution for 14 years and was volunteer before that. Institution was for people with mental, at that time, they call it intellectual disabilities now, but it was for MR, people with mental retardation. And I worked there for 14 years. I was a youth minister, and actually sort of getting back to it a little bit now. I had a priest contact me, and he wants me to do it again. A youth minister at a Catholic church. Did retreats. I still do some occasionally. It's always, I've always had those experiences. Always had all the different jobs somehow always involved youth.
So let me ask you, if you met some young man or something that was interested in going to clowning, how would you advise him?
Well, that's happened already.
That's
happened more than once. I've got one that tells me he has more than once said how his meeting me at a fair changed the course of his life, and he's so happy for it. He was probably junior high at the time, and I remember it very clearly. He came over, and I was just doing what I normally do, performing and interacting and just different things. And so every day he would come back and he would have his interchange with me, and I just kept going, and he just finally opened up and was like, I want to do this. You just, and so it was more than 1 year I saw him, and then bam, nothing for a while, and then all of a sudden he sends me a private message on social media. I'm going to go to clown camp. I'm like, how exciting. Awesome. I know, and he went twice to clown camp, and that's what he's doing. He's in there. He's in the pipe learning right now. Still developing his character and his look. Just being having met a woman, getting married, having a child sort of slows that down for a little bit.
I would imagine. What have you got coming up for this coming year?
Lots of fairs.
You want to tell us some of them?
Well, I just finished the Verde Valley Fair, which you know about, and I'm getting ready to fly out to the Contra Costa Fair next week. And then I've got some local engagements. Today I've had a number of responses wanting my face painting that I do. Because I do a little different style than most. I'm not traditional in my face painting. I call it body painting. Then be headed to nothing really big or different this year. I'm very fortunate, extremely fortunate in my craft and in the industry of doing a lot of becoming almost like an ambassador for some of these fairs, because I get repeat. And an advantage of working as a strolling performer versus a stage performer, I actually get the opportunity and luxury of making a connection with my audience. It can be a little bit more personal, and and it's because I'm right there versus, and I don't have that stage separating me from my audience. Anywhere I go is my stage, but I don't have that invisible barrier, stage chairs.
I understand.
I get to put myself into their stage versus them walking into my stage.
I have to ask if you had. I have to ask this. Have you ever had any bad experiences doing this?
Yes. Yes. I would say my worst year was the season that came about right after that year, that period of time. What was it? 4 years ago, when we had the crazy clown stuff in the fields, in the woods, in the streets, where we had I don't want to use the word scary clown, but we had people out there pretending to be clowns, and putting on actual masks, not makeup, and doing stupid stuff. And it made it very difficult.
I remember that. That was some kind of a Halloween thing, if I remember right.
It started out with something, but then it sort of was a social media phenomenon that grew. It grew through social media, and then people were just doing crazy stunts, and clowns in general became, oh no, oh my gosh, you're a clown, and it made it very difficult to do what I did, but I still pushed through. I mean, I remember driving, because I go dressed from wherever my housing is. I go dressed. I don't dress on site. And I remember every time I came up to an intersection, I pull back and make sure I'm not window to window with someone, because the things and stories we were hearing, I just couldn't. No, I had for my safety.
Yeah, that whole stuff. I remember that it went away. I don't know where it went.
Yeah,
but
it went away. Yes, it did went away, but there's a little residual still left from it. But I'm slowly killing that off with my own style of clowning and winning people over. I don't know if you were following, just this last fair. Had a young boy. He was, I shouldn't say obvious. His demeanor told me there was some intellectual disability, small, not big, but he still was quite communicative. Just looked at me straight up, but before even saying hello, said, "Are you going to kill me?" That was his statement.
Yeah.
And I didn't hold offense, harm nothing to it, except give him a big smile. And I'm like, "Oh, you're talking about the fake clowns." And then I started with that, and then proceeded with some entertainment and things that I use to say, "Oh, here's the difference between a real clown and a fake clown." And it's playful, fun stuff. And he started giggling and laughing. And if you saw my Facebook post, then you see the last picture is him hugging me. He came to me. I didn't open my arms. He then just looked at me and just embraced me and gave me a hug.
Oh, that's cool.
So it went from, "Are you going to kill me?" to, "I want to hug."
Yeah, that's cool. So how do people reach you if they're interested in booking you and working with you?
There is, of course, social media. I have a variety of those platforms. And there's direct through my website. And my website I think my website even has my phone number. I know it has my email. You can click on my website, and it gives you the email that you can send a message that way. Social media, private messages there, any of those, Facebook, Instagram, those are the only two I use. The other ones, those are just for fun.
That's too much.
I don't need all of them. Those really is not how you communicate. That's just how you share and brag, I call it.
Right. I don't use all of them either. It's too much.
I do have my business line. For instance, the number you called, I'm actually on my cell phone. The number you called, I believe, is my business line. And when I'm not home, if I don't answer, it goes to my cell phone.
Okay. Well, I've enjoyed talking to you, and what have you got coming up?
Dr. Costa Fair. Then after that, different. I don't have them in order. There's the Wyoming Big Show, Sublette County Fair, Central States Fair. Some of the others are still waiting for I don't want to say them because I don't have I have them penciled in, and they're like, yes, but I don't have the contracts. I don't want to say things, especially with what you're going to do with this, if the contract's not signed.
I'm sure you're going to get a lot more contracts.
Oh yeah. Well, like I said, the biggest thing I'm fortunate is I developed the rapport with the audience or the customers that I'm invited back because it's now, where's Lanky? Why isn't he here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's why I said, would you call that ambassador, goodwill, become a part of the fair is, wait a minute, there's one person actually at one fair said, well, if you're not here, it's just not the fair. But that's a fair I've been at for over 20 years.
All right, so you want to tell the audience what your website is?
www.clown1.com. Sort of like Air Force One, I'm Clown One. That's CLOWNONE.com.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Danny. I've enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Go bump a nose. That's in our profession. That's the same thing as break a leg.
Yep, I understand. Bye.
Bye-bye.